Hi there, this is Love Johar. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Again, a very important topic, a very commonly asked interview question, which all the freshers and all the even experienced people come across on a day to day basis. Web application firewall. What is a WAF? What is a web application firewall? What are the things you should know as a fresher? What are the things you should know as an experienced person? All the questions related to web application firewall, WAF, will be answered in this video. I have subject matter expert Akshay Dikshit with me, who is the founder of a company called Anzen Technologies. Akshay, welcome on board.
Hi, love. Thanks for having me. As always, great platform for discussion on topics cyber related to cybersecurity. Topic of today. So, since we have been discussing about different tools and technologies in relation to cybersecurity, uh, the discussion would not be complete if we haven't touched base on web application firewall. So a lot of us have an understanding of web application firewall. I'm just going to talk about what a web application firewall is. For people who already know, this might add a certain features to it. If you know some points, feel free to add to whatever I'm saying. If you have some specific questions, feel free to ask them. And for people who are new to this field or haven't had the chance to get exposed to the web application firewall, where it works, where it doesn't work, this could be a good forum of understanding the concept of web application firewall. So let me just straight away begin with it. So to understand web application firewall, we first have to understand a web application. So at a very brief level, I'll give an introduction to a web application. So when we're talking about web applications, essentially what we are saying is that it could be a two-tier or a three-tier architecture, where we are saying either so there is a front end through which you're accessing the application using maybe a thin client like your browser, and so there is a middleware, which is your application server, your application logic, and there is a backend, which is your database. So the communication happens in such a way that the end user will interact with the front end will interact with the middleware will interact with the backend, and middleware will facilitate to HTTP and HTTPS based requests and responses. So for people to understand the concept of web application firewall, understanding how a web application works is really important at a core level. The protocol that this works is basically HTTP and HTTPS, which is a hypertext transfer protocol. And when you add an added level of security, when you encrypt the transmission channel or the communication, it becomes HTTPS. Commonly known ports are 8443, although different ports may be used for custom applications, and nobody is restricting you to use a different port as well. One thing to understand and know at this point is about how an HTTP or an HTTPS packet looks like. So typically an HTTP packet would consist of your will start with saying which even before that, we have to understand that there are two ways in which HTTP requests and responses work. There are two methods, to be precise, although there are a lot of HTTP methods, but the most commonly known methods are GET and POST. So GET is basically to say that when you're typing a URL on a browser and when you hit enter, the request that gets generated is basically a GET request. That is to say, if I write anzentech.com and I hit enter in my browser, essentially what I'm saying is I'm sending a GET request for the root page of the host anzentech.com, and that is how the packet gets designed, and it gets sent, and your there the DNS, all the domain name resolutions and everything happens at the back end, and eventually you will reach the application server, and the application server will respond back by saying that yes, in fact, you're looking for the root page and this is the content of the root page. It will respond back with the HTML content. So the HTTP response will have 200 OK, that is to say that yes, I have this page is present, and in the body it will have the content of that page, that HTML page, with the different CSS, with the different JavaScripts and HTML tags and the whole HTML page. So this is how a typical communication works. Now, when we say the second one method, which is to say the post method, so that is basically used when, for example, let's say you have a form. You're on a page, you're on a registration form, or you are on a login page. Now, as soon as you enter some data and you click on OK or go or submit or whatever, what essentially happens is a post request gets generated. So the difference between a get request and a post request is that in the get request, in the URL itself, all the parameters will pass whatever parameters need to pass. So for example, it could be anzentech.com/login.php question ID equal to this, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Now, in a post request, it's considered a little more secure than a get request, is to say that the parameters that are going to get passed, the details that you have filled in the form when you press OK, get passed in the body or the message part of the HTTP request. So along with the whole headers of the HTTP request, you are basically sending the parameters as a part of post request. Yes. So I see there is a question.
Yeah, Akshay, Masha Win is here. Masha is asking, she seems to be from abroad. She's asking, are you covering including demo or only WAF concepts and introduction today?
No, Masha. So when we will cover web application security, or we'll cover some types of either attacks or concepts of security, we will cover it in demo. This is a general discussion on web application firewall. Unfortunately, I do not have access right now to any demo version of a product that is available. So this is not going to cover any demonstration for this particular session.
Still, Masha, having said that, if you have any questions regarding to WAF, please feel free to ask, right, Akshay?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so in post request, you are essentially getting all the data and you're sending it back to the server, and the server is responding back with either an acknowledgement or whichever way the web server is programmed to respond. Now, this is a general concept of a get and a post, and that is to say, when you are using HTTPS along with post, the data that is passing, the parameters or the information that is passing gets encrypted. So even if somebody is conducting a man in the middle, or there is a person who is sniffing on the channel, he will not be able to sniff out the details in the post requests that are being shared with the web server. So that is why people say you should implement HTTPS, especially when you are sending information, or there is a dynamic pages, or there are interactions with the servers, and there are some actions that are being taken in applications. HTTPS is important. Not so important if you are specifically talking about only static content. That is to say, static content is a content that every time you visit a page, you will get only those sets of HTML tags and those pages, and the pages will be static. No new content is being generated. Dynamic pages are pages wherein they require some input to you, and basis on your input, the parameters will pass to the server. Server will do some processing and respond back with either more details, or giving some confirmation or some action being taken at server level and then being displayed at the client level. So this is like a generic communication. Now, with the advent of web applications, a lot of attacks on applications started happening. So there will be input parameters, there will be attacks based on the different types of inputs that are going into applications, which is to say that input validation based attacks, talking about cross-site scripting, talking about SQL injection, talking about remote code execution, talking about local file inclusion, remote file inclusion. So all these types of attacks are basically leveraging the fact that there is an input field, and you're able to send in different types of parameters, and then try to, based on the responses from the server, you will be able to check whether the website or the web application is vulnerable to a specific type of attack or not. Now, although I'm not going to cover these attacks in details, there will be a separate web application, because I think people have requested to either take a session on OWASP or take a session on web application security.
Yes, yeah.
So we are going to do that, but this specifically is only for the technology of WAF. And just to describe how a WAF functions and what types of attacks it protects against, and what are the different models in which it is deployed. And when we talk about specific web application security, then WAF may come as just a point, but it's more towards the kind of attacks that are out there. including the categories laid down by OWASP Foundation. So then what happens is to protect. So there are two ways of protection against a web application attack. One is to identify the vulnerability and fix it at a code level. Second is then there are attacks targeted towards the server, and also if code level fixing is not there, or along with the code fixes that you have done, you want an added layer of protection, you put something called as a web application firewall. So this is where the concept of WAF comes in. So WAF is basically that layer that sits between the web server and the end user, and it will monitor and filter all types of HTTP and HTTPS traffic. And basis on the rules configured, it will either allow, deny, or take a specific action on the type of data packet that is passing through it. So the concept is of a firewall, but the traffic and the type of traffic that I'm reading is very specific to HTTP, HTTPS, or web-based communication, to be precise.
So Akshay, is this a particular appliance only dedicated to this job role?
Yes. So you may call it an appliance. There are different modes of, so you can integrate an application with a web WAF. A WAF can be a physical appliance. A WAF can be a logical appliance. There are cloud-based WAFs as well. WAF is provided in entirely on-premise and also as a managed WAF, which is to say a third party's vendor or a person or an organization is basically managing your WAF and giving you support on your WAF. So there are different models of WAF deployment, but yes, it is a technology that is specifically to handle web application traffic and to like implement manage security of the traffic in the traffic that is going between the user and a web application firewall. Right. So over time, what has happened is that these WAFs have evolved in a lot of ways. So what happened when WAF as a concept got originally introduced, it was they were basically first generation WAF, which was just a pattern matching detection, which is to say you create access control based on whitelists. You create access control based on blacklists, and basis on that, it will decide whether to have that traffic pass through or to stop the traffic at that level itself, right? Over time, this first gen WAFs got kind of evolved into second gen WAFs, which was like automated whitelists. That is to say, these web application firewalls would, over a period of time, monitor different types of web applications, the behaviors of applications over a period of several weeks or months, and they would automatically generate the whitelists of characters. Now, there was a very specific challenge with the second gen WAF that was created, because the nature of applications used to change very frequently. Because as an organization, if I'm building an application, basically I'm doing a lot of changes. It's a continuous process. Developers keep working on different builds, keep rolling out newer versions, keep adding pages, and over time, what it was observed that because the turnaround time, the time required for changes was so frequent that the application in itself could not basically understand or create that robust whitelist based on application characteristics, because the application characteristic in itself kept on changing so within a month there would if there are various changes you're doing over a period of weeks, then the WAF does not get the chance to sit and monitor and understand the behavior of the application. So that kind of posed a great challenge with the automated whitelisting characteristic of a web application firewall. And then, so after that came the third generation WAF, which is to say it had something called as a logic-based detection. So along with blacklisting and whitelisting, it would incorporate the features of deep packet analysis to go inside the packet, read the content, and based on correlation, figure out whether this traffic could be malicious or not. So even if you are trying to mask your traffic or your content data by using encoding, and in hopes that at the server level it will be decoded and it passes through the WAF. These third generation firewalls had the capacity to do deeper analysis, do decoding, and understand that there is a single level, double, triple, 4, 5, 6, whatever level of encoding that is happening, and this traffic is in fact malicious.
So Akshay, is this signature based anomaly detection only which happens, or other types also?
No, it's to say yes, to an extent it is heavily powered by signature based, but when I said deep packet analysis, that is also to say that pattern of the different types of attacks, what from a single sources, if I'm continuously getting different types of attacks, I can match pattern of the different packets that are coming, and I can say possibly a sequel. So for example, if we are talking about second level or third level or a complicated SQL injection attack, it does not happen in a single stage. First, I will send in a benign query, SQL based malicious tampered input to just on basis of response to find out which type of SQL injection attack is there. So it takes a lot of queries for me to understand or conduct a proper SQL injection attack. So basis on the types of queries that are coming over a period of time, it will be able to predict with certainty that in fact there is a SQL injection attack in progress, even if you are masking the different types of inputs. Yeah. So this is kind of the evolution per se, if you call it, of WAF. Then we go ahead and say that there are basically two different models in which a web application firewall works. That is to say, there is a positive security model and there is a negative security model. So basically what you are saying, a positive security model is that you are basically creating a model of that application. You're trying to understand the baselines of requests and responses of how a typical application behaves. You're creating a positive model of the application, and any model, any request, a bunch of request responses which fit the positive security model will only be allowed. Then there is a negative security model, which is, so positive security model can be related to a whitelist. Let's not call it exactly a whitelist, but you can relate it to a whitelist, saying that, you know, this is a good model. This is typically for an application, this type of traffic I am considering as a good traffic or acceptable traffic, right? Then on a negative security model, what we are saying is something related to a blacklist, which is to say a negative security model, to say that I know there are some patterns to specific types of attacks and techniques. This WAF will keep on updating itself with the newer types of attacks. It is powered obviously by a good intelligence platform, and the traffic which is closer to the negative security model, it will block that traffic. Now, having said that, although this sounds like signature based, it can correlate, and it can, like I said, with the different types of subsequent packets that are coming, it can correlate and actually thwart complex attacks as well. So a good web application firewall would typically support both.
I think I'm getting a network interruption on Akshay's end. Just give me a moment. Let me check on that, guys. Just give me a moment. Guys, you have to wait for a couple of minutes. Akshay is facing some network issues. He'll be joining back in just 2 minutes time, okay? And he'll join from a different network this time, so that we don't get these interruptions again. By the time he's joining, I can see 12 to 15 people on the live stream. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to add your questions in the comment box that you see on this live video, and we will make sure that all the questions are answered. You can ask anything or everything related to information security, cyber security, any standards, or anything and everything related to SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, HIPAA, GDPR, etc. So now Akshay is back. Welcome, Akshay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There seems to be some connectivity issue
No
because there
worries.
are
No worries.
heavy
Go for
rains
it.
here in Mumbai. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No worries.
apologize for that, friends. So yeah, so I was talking about negative and positive security model. So that is to say, all these different types. A web application firewall should typically support both types of security models. And so the way in which a typical WAF would work is that it is monitoring your application. It will, in a typical WAF, what it will do is it will give you a dashboard. It will show you within your application there are these specific pages, and on pages what you can do is you can define specific parameters. You can define all the inputs that this page is getting. It will display the value of that input. It will display the minimum and maximum size as well, and it will tell you what based on the rules that you have configured, how many deviations it is observing over a period of time. So something which is suspicious and something which is confirmed to be malicious. So it has a good WAF will have a great dashboard. It will show you with granularity each and every page, each and every variable or parameter or keyword, whatever you want to call it, and against it what types of inputs it is observing and what did it filter, what action did it take, did it block it, or is it calling it suspicious and calling for your action for you to determine what to do in such cases, right? So also to say a good feature of a good WAF would be that it would support HTTP 1.0, HTTP 1.1. It will have support for different types of field length, different types of contents, different types of headers, informations. It will have support for different message formats that are typically used or exchanged when there is a web application communication happening, which is to say it will support have support for formats like XML, formats like SOAP, formats like JSON. So typical communication might happen in a JSON based format or in an XML or a SOAP based format. So it would have support for these different types of formats as well. It will have anti-evasion capabilities. So what attackers or crackers would typically do if you are doing monitoring and check at a very primary level, what you are doing is essentially you are just reading the traffic, and if it is fulfilling the rules of an attack, you are blocking it. But what like I mentioned before, so you could encode it. It could be HTML encoded, it could be URL encoded, it could be base 64 encoded, basis on how the application is supporting the kind of encoding. Attackers also use encoding formats. So your WAF should have decoding formats, should be able to understand the well-known encoding standard that web servers are programmed to decode, and it should have the decoding and analyzing capability in itself. So that is a must for a web application firewall. It should have SSL decryption and inspection capability as well, right? Both of these things, like at a very basic level, you should be able to do at least signature based attack detection, which is to say, so what are the different types of common types of attacks? So people would typically try to enumerate directories, like right. I know that a directory traversal is a very common type of attack. If the PHP is the platform, web CGI, web PHP, these types of folders will try to get accessed. So then other than that, known web application attacks, I mean, which is basically to say that we have something called as a common vulnerability enumeration. For people who are into this field, they understand, who have been doing application security assessment or web vulnerability assessment, they understand there is something called as a CVEID. So MITRE is an organization that has established these CVEIDs, and that is to say specific types of attacks which are known and which are very prevalent will have their name and CVEID associated with them, and will be recorded in the MITRE CVE database. You can look up the type of attack, you can look up to the severity, you can look up to the method in which this is done, and whether there is a public exploit that is available or not. So a good web application firewall should have a exhaustive list of web application vulnerabilities and attacks. based on their various CVE IDs, which is mentioned in the CVE MITRE website. And this information is freely available. So for anybody who wants to know more about CVE IDs and what this is about and what are the different attacks, you can search MITRE CVE and you will get a whole list of different vulnerabilities that are associated, either network based or application based as well. But since we are talking only of web application firewall, I am specifically focusing on the web vulnerabilities part of it. It should have an understanding of, so like OWASP, basically what OWASP has done, OWASP has over time aggregated the different types of attacks that have been prevalent in the industry, and it has categorized them into 10 separate envelopes. And so it should understand those things as well. But if it has an understanding of all types of attacks, OWASP generally, usually, typically already gets covered, right? So there are different modes in which a web application firewall works. That is to say, a good web application firewall will work as a reverse proxy, which is to say, if a WAF is sitting between me and the web server, I will not know what the IP address of the web server is. If I try to buzz
this was one of my questions. Actually, I wanted to ask this, and I'm glad you brought that up. I have 15 people on the line. It's a Sunday, so that's one thing I wanted to tell you first, because you can't see the statistics. That is a good thing. Secondly, I wanted to ask was, do we need a proxy server once we have a WAF, or are they similar things? So this was one of my questions.
So your WAF is basically serving as a reverse proxy. That is to say, it is sitting between the server and the user, and the user, when he is typing the URL of the application, the domain name server is responding back with the IP address of which is fetching actually the IP address of the WAF. So if you're trying,
this is acting like a proxy, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that is to say that you will not know the IP address of the target application server. Hence, you will not be able to directly interact and attack the web application.
Right. Got it.
Right. So that is one of the good features, or kind of an added layer of protection that is there. So if you're trying to conduct application level DDoS, if you're sending too many packets at once, it kind of gets managed there itself. One thing to say, Love, is some load balancing solutions or load balancers are providing WAF functionalities as well. But in my experience, it is advisable to go in for the kind of WAF which specializes in web application tools and techniques. There are a lot of vendors out there. You will just search for it. You will get a lot of, you might be knowing a couple of them as well. The people who have been providing firewalls have been providing very good web application firewalls as well. So this is pretty much the whole gist of the functioning of a web application. And if we talk about attacks, it will cater to all the different types of attacks that are out there. Basically to say, like I had mentioned, the input validation, the DOS is basically one of the greatest things, because it is easier to craft and send automated packets or payloads in web application than it might be for a server. So it is a very great area of concern and something that should be monitored very effectively. So that is a type of attack that kind of is addressed and thwarted by a good web application firewall in itself. At a server level, when you, so I would like to say, if you're deploying applications if you're making applications in ASP.NET, and you're deploying ASPX applications, IIS in itself gives you a lot of WAF based features. So it has detection capabilities for different types of attacks, like CSRF, like SQL injection and XSS basis on keyword based searches. You can configure it, so it has those capabilities. So if you have to protect an application in a very holistic way, what you can do is, at a code level, if you fix it, if you enable the checks of a keyword based whitelisting at the server level, and you also put a web application firewall in itself, that is a very good way of protecting your web application against different types of attacks, because it is very common, and web application is one of the greatest vectors for people to try to come and infiltrate an organization. At one point it was more one of the most overlooked part, but now yes, we have gotten aware about those situations. Conducting continuous web application security assessments. Now the great thing about so when we do Love, I would like to mention at this point, when we do a web application security assessment, there are two modes in which you would do a web application security assessment. One is when your WAF, you will get yourself as a professional pen tester or as a pen tester inside an organization. Your machine will get whitelisted at the WAF level so that you can test the application itself. That is a gray box kind of a testing. Now, when we talk about a black box kind of a testing, you are basically, what you are doing is you're also testing the capabilities of the WAF. So you're trying to conduct attack or trying to find out vulnerabilities on the application, but also you're testing the capability of WAF to be able to detect. So when we talk about red teaming or when we talk about external black box web application assessment, essentially what we are doing is that we are also testing. So there's an application testing that is happening, and along with that there is also the testing of the web application firewall. So yeah, I think, Love, yes, small topic, but kind of.
I have some startup questions for you, Akshay, before you
Sure.
try to end it. Okay, I know you
Yeah.
want to go quickly today because it's a Sunday, but I have a couple of questions. And Mukesh Gupta is here. He's asking some questions. I'll come to that. Mukesh, just give me a couple of minutes because there is no video where I do not touch on startups. So startups is my favorite topic of the day. So let's say there is a startup, and do they have to get a WAF solution? That is the first thing. And the second thing is, can they do it on by themselves, or do they need a organization like Anzen to help them out? And third thing is, how can they justify a business case of that sort if that is a real need for them?
Okay. So there are multiple ways to answer this question. It actually depends on the type of budget that you have for information security. The first thing is that if your code is robust, if you have done secure code review, if you have done web application security assessment, if you have followed hygiene of secure coding guidelines, then the chances of vulnerabilities coming up reduce to a great extent. Right? That is one. Also, at your server level, if you have hardened the server, if you have patched and updated everything, if you're using a hardened web application server, if you have enabled the security checks on your web server, that reduces the attack surface even further. Okay. If you have put proper server validations, not just at client level, also at server level, that is adding up to the security. So if your applications are less, you could just go by with this. Should you find the need of using a WAF, there are open source web application firewalls available. You might want to look at the open source variations. You might want to configure it. You might want to use it, get comfortable with the concept of WAF, because a misconfigured WAF will end up blocking legitimate traffic as well and harming your business. That is something you don't want to do. You want to understand what my see. Ultimately, Love, it's supporting a business. Security should be an enabler, not a roadblock for business, right? So the important thing to understand is your normal view operations, your services of the application should never be hampered. So in that sense, you might want a professional help. If you feel that your application scale is lesser, if you're technical enough to be able to implement an open source web application firewall, it's not an issue. You can do it by yourself. Should you find the need of your applications growing, or you are facing continuous attacks from people on your application for some maybe as a reason of bad luck, or you just caught some attacker's eye, you might want to go in for a WAF. Should you want to go for a professional WAF, commercial web application firewall solution, then you can engage with a consulting firm. They will help you evaluate the right platform for you that is also economic for you, and also will help you define the rules, define the policies on the WAF, will help you monitor the WAF so that you can focus on your business and give you like a full-fledged support along with the implementation for the application firewall.
So Akshay, can I, from the understanding that I have got now, can I say that being threat prevention the ultimate target for a WAF, because we are actually trying to prevent the threats at the beginning level only. Does a startup who is actually doing a lot of financial transactions and being complying with PCI DSS, it's kind of a use
You
case for
have
them,
you
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, you need to have WAF. If you are into financial transaction and under PCI DSS, so PCI does so I apologize, I don't remember, but PCI has a very specific definition of a web application firewall. It's a great way. It says that it's a hardware appliance or a software that filters, and it has a great definition for it. I can't seem to recall it, but PCI does recognize WAF as a great control for application security.
Yes, and before I jump on to the questions, can it also block bots?
Yeah, so a lot of crawlers and spiders also come in and try to crawl the application, and so basically what it is that you have any type of crawler that you build. So over time, what it was recognized was that crawler may be used for capturing some information relating to marketing or some advertisements, but every web crawler or every bot, uh, if only for crawling purposes, should follow or respect the rules of robots.txt. So you would typically place a robots.txt in your application, and it will tell you what to allow and what to disallow. I mean, only allow, you're supposed to crawl to only these folders, rest everything is disallowed. So if some crawler or some bot is not respecting these rules, it will have the functionality to block it. Also, if you're talking about a bot from a sense of creating automated attacks, scripted attacks, yes, it will have the capability to understand that this is not a normal user transaction. Because I'm getting so many transactions per second, this is most probably a bot, and it will block that traffic or deny it.
Great, Akshay. Great. So I have around 15 people on the live stream right now. Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to add in the comment section, and we'll try to answer them. So now I'm jumping on to Mukesh's question, Akshay. Mukesh is asking, if an organization has already having a packet filter firewall in place, then what is the need of having a WAF solution? What is the business case for that?
Mukesh, so you have a packet filtering firewall, but does your packet filtering firewall recognize a SQL injection attack? Would your packet filtering firewall understand that there is a possibly malicious SQL query that is going? It may not directly be a DOS attack, it may not directly be a malicious attack, but does it have the capability of analysis of all the different types of HTTP? Because there are a plethora of attacks specific to HTTP and HTTPs on web application, and there are variants, and then there is masking, and then there is encoding at multiple levels. But if your packet firewall basically has these capabilities, then it is a WAF. Then basically you're using a WAF. Then your firewall in itself has WAF capabilities. So WAF is to say I am only specifically focusing on your business critical application. So all applications might not. So you have to understand one thing, that in an organization, not all applications will be put under WAF. Only the applications that are, like Love mentioned, that if there's a financial transaction which is under PCI compliance, and you cannot afford to have it compromised in any way, would typically be placed under WAF.
Yeah,
So I
again,
hope.
depends upon the complexity of the level of transactions you are
Yes.
performing online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because a packet filtering firewall essentially will not cater to sophisticated web application attacks.
Masha Win is here, Akshay. Masha is asking, what is the difference between IPS and WAF?
Yes. So intrusion. So Masha, IPS and WAF, basically at a very basic level, if you say that when we talk about network based or server based attacks, so how we are bifurcating vulnerabilities is to say that when an attack is against a network device, or when an attack is against a server, the complexity or the range of the types of attacks are quite broad. Because now it's not just HTTP and HTTPS traffic that I'm talking about. Now this is talking about the different ports, different services, and I'm trying to exploit this service. I'm trying to conduct different types of attacks on all protocols and all services and all ports. A range of an IPS, the detection capabilities of an IPS are specifically targeted toward network-based attacks over the line, whatever is going. So it is monitoring for traffic on the network, and be it between a database server and a web server, be it between an endpoint, be it between a network and a switch, an IPS is essentially sitting on the wire and looking at traffic and deciding whether there is a possible intrusion happening or not. Network based. If endpoint based IPS is, then it is analyzing data on the server or the endpoint, and it is saying whether an intrusion has happened or not. A WAF is basically to say, I am purely monitoring the traffic that is going on, and basis on the rules and analysis, I'm doing packet analysis, and if I suspect something's happening which is similar to a web application attack, I will stop it or deny it or block it. So I hope that clears your question.
Yes, Akshay, great. So Mukesh has returned now. Mukesh is asking a follow-up question. He wants to know, so in both the cases, firewalls will be needed, right?
Again, Mukesh, if your application, okay, let me answer this in a way that if your application has a scale of a lot of users, what if you are catering to lakhs of users per day? Right? What if you are an e-commerce giant? What if you are having so much traffic that you yourself cannot use a traditional firewall or a normal monitoring service to check each and everything? In that case, because you are at a scale, and that is why you will have a budget, and because this is a money generating application or a sensitive application for you, this is why you need a web application firewall.
Yes, e-commerce is a clear-cut use case. I can completely see that.
Yeah, because they get attacked a lot. I mean, I've done consulting for e-commerce applications.
Mukesh, I think what I have understood so far from Akshay in this video is this is the next level of protection that depending upon your organization, if you are under attacks, if you are facing a lot of attacks, this is what you need. That is
and if you don't want to take any chances, understand this, Mukesh, that if you have fixed vulnerabilities at code and you are doing continuous code reviews, if you're following secure software development life cycle, you might not need a WAF. But then again, can you take that risk is the question. Can you afford to take that risk? If there is a single attack window that was left unchecked, can your application sustain it? Can your business continue? If not, then it is better to implement a web application firewall.
Your business risk is the biggest use case, Mukesh.
What is your risk appetite? Exactly. What is your risk appetite? If you can handle such a risk, so that is why you may not want every application. You may say that, okay, no, my code review and my application security assessment is good enough for this application, but this is my major bread earning application. This is the one I need to protect. This is handling sensitive customer data. This has research data, whatever. You might want to protect that.
Great. I have a new user, Akshay. He's asking, again, this seems to be from abroad. He's asking, in today's next generation firewalls, deep packet inspection, application filtering, blocking, and other features are already available like SQL injection, etc. Then why we need WAF?
If you have next generation firewall that have WAF capabilities, then you do not need a WAF, because then your application, your firewall is behaving like a WAF. It has features of WAF. You have to understand that it is not to say that, for example, I have a vendor who is already giving me a firewall. He can extend its functionality to include web application protection. In that case, you might not need a dedicated WAF, but it is still following the same principles. What you wrote right now, my friend, is essentially what I explained as the features of WAF. Application filtering, when you say application filtering, it's not application filtering. It's basically to say packet inspection, basically detecting patterns in the HTTP and HTTPS packets, and basis on correlations, either allowing or denying the traffic. If that is what you're talking about, then essentially you're explaining a WAF itself.
So guys, I think you have to understand one thing, which I completely understand from Akshay's point of view, is if your inherent hardware, which is already there in your infrastructure, already has these capabilities, then you do not have to put in this separate appliance. But you have to make sure that are your next generation firewalls able to block all the attacks, or are you still under some kind of attacks? That is first thing. Second thing is, what is your use case? Are you doing a lot
And
of,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yes, and one
But
more thing, love, I would like to add is that a firewall, a network based firewall, is being managed by a separate team. So if your team has the capability to together analyze both network based attacks and web application based attacks and coordinate with one is talking with the system administrator, server administrator, other is talking with the application team. If you have that capability, and if your firewall in itself can handle all the types of attacks, and if you have that much scale, if you have that much infrastructure to support it, then go for it. I mean, there is no restriction. Who is to say that you need to have two separate solutions for it?
yeah, one thing I want to clear up here only, guys, there is no one size fits all approach. Okay, these videos are not targeted on that. Your companies are different, your organizations are different. You are a better judge because we don't know, of course, what all hardware you have, right? So it's based upon your requirements, based upon your risk appetite, based upon the kind of attacks that you have. These are variables here, guys. Try to understand this. This is
So
not a, yeah.
I have seen, love, eventually when company grow after a certain size, even with their firewalls having packet filtering capabilities, application analysis, they still buy a separate WAF because they want to ensure
Absolutely,
that this traffic, this
absolutely,
application in itself gets protected.
yeah, absolutely.
It's about the type of protection I want against the application and how much of it can I afford and not afford.
It's just like the same thing, Akshay. Why do people have high availability? They can only run single firewall. What is the need of having dual firewalls? The thought
That's
behind the same,
yeah, the same
yeah,
answer, that if
it's
you
the
already
same
have
thing.
a firewall,
Yeah,
why are you? Because you want an added
yeah,
layer of protection. It's how
absolutely.
many ever layers. If you're talking about defense in depth, defense in depth would say that have a separate firewall and have a separate WAF. Do not tune your network firewall to behave like a web application firewall. So what if you're following defense in depth as a strategy? Who
Yeah.
knows?
So again, depending upon your organization, depending upon your use case, you have to understand what is the best risk that you can actually take in and cater to. Are you fine with bots? Because bots are a new thing these days. Can your next generation firewalls ensure that there is no bots attack? Of course. Don't go for a WAF. If not, then go for it. It's simple like that. Masha,
And it,
yeah.
yes.
Masha is there. Masha is asking how WAF recognize and classify the web traffic patterns and
Okay.
deliver the actual legitimate traffic to actual web server.
Yeah. So Masha, this is done through something called as a policy.
Hmm.
So you are basically saying that you configure policy. So in an HTTP packet there will be the content, and what it is doing is it is looking through the type of traffic that is coming to the server, or that is directed towards the server, and either through direct rules, that is to say, if I definitely see a select statement, a star statement, or I see a script tag, or I see a CMD, or I see a grep, or I see a Unix command, or I see a DOS command, I can specifically block, saying that it is a possible remote code execution, it is a possible remote file inclusion, if it is looking at or it is a directory traversal attack, or it is a SQL injection attack in progress. From pattern, it is to say that there is a connection that was established. There is, so it's a state, right? You establish a connection. So when there is a session that has been established between a client and a server, that is to say you are analyzing the packets that are coming basis on the number of packets per second or per millisecond that are coming in, basis on the sequence of packets that are coming in. So it has complex correlation capabilities to say, based on packet number 2, 5, 6, and 8, this is indicating that it is trying to find a SQL injection vulnerability, maybe a blind SQL injection vulnerability, because it might not be it is not, it is definitely not a one. It's not like you will send one single query and it will, the SQL server will get hacked. That's not how it happens, right? It's based on different queries and responses. You determine what are the number of columns, what are the different tables, then you enumerate the tables, then you enumerate the values, and eventually you try to either dump the database or upload a shell. And even if you're using an automated tool, that will do essentially the same thing, just faster, and will try different combinations. And this is what it will detect. And if it is
Great.
legitimate, it will pass it through. If it is matches a certain, either it will alarm you that a possible malicious attempt was made, or it will block it directly.
Great, Akshay. So Akshay, Mukesh is there. Mukesh is saying that I have understood now. So thank you so much for answering his question. He's thanking now. Uh, I think Kami has another follow-up question. He's saying that placing firewalls at edge and users coming from outside to access your internal server. So firewall is inspecting all the traffic for you. So where WAF will be placed in this design?
It will just before the web application. So the traffic, basically, to say, when you're trying to hit, you're telling your DNS server, or you're telling everybody that if I want to go to anzentech.com, this is the IP address, you give the IP address of the WAF. This is the simplest way to answer your question.
Yeah. Post that Mukesh is saying on questions of Kami is, if all functionalities are all in one, then can we face performance issues?
A lot of times.
Of
A
course,
lot
why
of
not?
times.
Don't you
And
know
that
that?
is that is
Yeah,
exactly what Love was talking about.
absolutely. A
We want
single
to
router.
bifurcate.
Yeah,
Yes.
let me add to this. Actually, a single router can perform a switching function. It can act as a DHCP server. It can act as a firewall. It can perform all the functions. And why do people buy all these equipment separately? Is your answer to these questions, guys? Try to understand this. Why is the need of a firewall? A router can simply do that. What is the need of your DHCP servers? A router can simply do that. What is the need of having firewalls in place? A router can do that. This is your answers, guys. Why are you getting confused? All functionalities are different. Why do people get two firewalls? Like a single firewall can do the job. So all this is your design. This is how you design your infrastructure.
Yeah, see, Mukesh and Kami, the idea is that you may have a functionality in one appliance to do a lot of things, but what is the scale of traffic that you are handling? If the scale is lesser, you might want to invest on a single solution that has a lot of capabilities. As the scale increases, your appliance will not be able to handle it. Believe me, and if it even goes down for 5 seconds, 6 seconds, that is all an attacker might need to go inside and infect and actually compromise the system. And once it is done, then it is done. Even if the application, the firewall comes back up, now the person has got a foothold inside the
Yes.
server, and you
Number
can't
of
afford.
cycles.
Yes.
Yes, number of cycles, number of IO throughputs, all these things you have to understand, guys. If your firewall, a single firewall, is already running on more than 90% of utilization, then you need a second firewall. That's why people do that, right? Great. So Masha is there. Masha is saying that she got all the answers. Thank you so much, Masha.
Masha, keep tuned in, because you mentioned that will there be a demo or not. Stay tuned. We will touch base on, because a lot of people have been asking on application security. It's just it depends on whenever it comes up. So I cannot promise anything, but stay tuned to these videos, and you will find something good for you.
Yeah, and Mukesh is now saying, got it. Thank you so much, Mukesh, for confirming that. Shiva Yadav is there. Hi, Shiva. I see you first time. So thank you so much for being here on the line, live stream with us. Shiva is actually asking, can you please explain me the use case, how a firewall can help in preventing insider threats?
How a firewall can help prevent an insider threat? Why do you want a firewall to protect against an
I
insider?
was about to say the
A
same thing. Yeah.
firewall, Shiva, is basically to segregate. A firewall is the one that differentiates between what is inside and what is outside. So insider threat is thwarted by behavioral analytics, and insider threat is thwarted by zero trust approach, or insider threat is thwarted by endpoint detection, intrusion detection systems, and antiviruses, and such solutions. So you're misplacing your expectation if you're expecting your firewall, even if I don't know of one. If there is a feature that a firewall is claiming that it will help with preventing insider threat, I just personally feel that's not the best use of the firewall. So let's try to keep a thing for what it is, and if we are trying to use it for something else, then its core functionalities might get affected.
Yeah, so insider threat, Shiva Akshay rightly mentioned, is not the core job of a firewall. Please try to understand that. Great, Akshay. So Kami is returning. First of all, Kami, thank you so much for your questions. A lot of people are getting value. Since you are asking these follow-up questions, you are generating a lot of value. So I really want to commend you for that. And feel free to ask questions, okay? So Akshay, I think when you explained the design, so he is not sure where to place. He's still confused.
Yes, you can place the WAF in the DMZ zone. That is not an issue. It depends on where your server is lying, and uh, from see, Kami, you have to understand. I'm not a network architect, so but I can tell you that yes, I have seen implementations of WAF on DMZ. It works. It is basically to protect the web application, and a network architect might be the best person to tell you. But yes, why not? I've personally seen implementations of WAF on the DMZ before the application, and all the traffic that is going to the application passes through the WAF.
Yeah, great, Akshay. So, first of all, Akshay, a lot of engagement even on a Sunday. So, a huge round of applause for all the people who have joined to the live stream on a Sunday at evening, late evening, and asking all these questions. Guys, thank you so much. It's a great value for all of us and for the people who will watch this video later. Akshay, any concluding notes from you, because it's already reaching an hour. So I'm sorry you wanted to rush up things, but as questions we cannot stop people from asking questions, right? Just give me 1 second, guys. I think Akshay has lost connection again.
I can't hear you, love, for some reason. Sorry, there seems to be some. Let me try to rejoin again. Uh, Unfortunately, love, I can't hear you. So I don't know. Love, it seems that you're muted.
Oh yes, I was muted. Yeah, apologies. Yeah,
Okay.
you're able to hear me now.
Yes, I can hear
Great,
you.
great.
Yeah.
I have said a lot of things, man. People were not able to hear me. Sorry. So, Kami is saying thanks, first of all. So, he's got all the answers that he was looking for. That is the first thing. So, Akshay, he's got the things clarified now. And Masha is there. Masha is asking any open source WAF available to simulate personal lab. So, she wants to know.
Yes, there are four, Masha, and one of the best knowns is Mod Security, one that I have personally fiddled around with. So if you want to get your hands dirty, search for Mod Security. There are a couple of others, which is Web Knight, Shadow Daemon, NAXSI. These are different types, so you may want to search over this. But Mod Security is something I've personally fiddled around with, and it's good, and it gives you great insight. So go ahead and do let me know what experience you had, and if you're facing any problem specifically in Mod Security, I would love to help anytime.
Great, Akshay. Akshay, a great session, first of all. And apologies, you wanted to run sooner, but you cannot because of these questions. And you know that
No,
we
no,
cannot
it's
control
it's,
questions.
it's completely fine, love. I mean,
Yeah,
I enjoy it, and when people ask questions, is when the whole point. It kind of generates the value that we are trying to deliver through these
yeah.
videos.
Great, great, Akshay. Thank you so much for your time. Anything you would like to conclude, ending notes, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so see, the topic was light. It was to just introduce you with the concept of web application firewall, because although people do understand it, there were still so many questions out there, and I'm really glad that they got answered. Is to understand the deciding factors for a web application firewall. So when you're trying to protect an application, what I want to repeat is that there is this secure software development life cycle for your application. Then there is this hardening and protection of the server itself, and as an additional security, along with enabling the checks and balances inside the inherent capabilities of your web server, you web application firewall kind of completes the cycle of holistic protection against web application attacks, which are one of the most common ways used to infiltrate inside an organization. So if you are growing to a scale where you are experiencing a lot of attacks, WAF will be an investment, and in the long term, it will help you create assurance and value and help sustain business while not focusing on dealing with each and every type of attack. Yeah. So yeah, I
Great.
love that's it.
Great, Akshay, great. And Mukesh is also saying, well explained all the points, so he's got all these doubts clarified. So, guys, feel free to share these videos, feel free to like these videos, feel free to subscribe to this channel. If you are getting your questions answered, please get the word out so that more people can join these live streams, so that more people can ask these questions, so that when myself and Akshay join, we see 10 questions already on the board. This is what we want to see in the future, guys. Feel free to ask your questions. This is a platform where you will get your questions answered, and don't even think that YouTube is trying to pay us anything. We are not getting anything out of these videos. Let me be very clear on that. So this is only an initiative that we are doing for you guys who are out there trying to search knowledge, trying to gain real insights into things which you cannot get on Google searches. This is why we are doing it, and this is how it will be always. So feel free to ask questions. And Akshay, again, a great topic on a Sunday. Really appreciate your time. And thank you so much. Again, I would just like to add one last thing before concluding. Since this is a pandemic situation, guys, please take care of yourself and your families. Do not try to roam around, because I see, Akshay, a lot of people have started roaming around, which is not a good thing. So try to stay in your homes, guys. And Akshay, since you are in Mumbai, I think the situation is already very tragic over there, right?
Yeah,
So
we have to be extra cautious.
yeah, guys, just be extra cautious. Try to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your families. This is a crucial time, and just stay safe. Take care. Bye bye. Thank you, Akshay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.